Hope the words are better than the picture anyway. Okay. So what I wanted to look at is we know that Yosef is this person who does these incredible things. He's able to put into play this idea of making sure that he gets all the necessary grain and everything like that for during the 7 years. So it says, the Torah says that Yosef himself, he gathered everything, so all the food for the 7 years. And he puts it all into this the ochel from everywhere. He puts into specific places. Then the Torah describes the amount that Yosef is able to collect. It says he collected bar kachol hayam, like the sand of the seashore, harbei ma'od, which is a lot. Sounds like a Monty Python skit, like so much and so much more. Ad ki chadal lispor ki ein mishpar, until he couldn't count anymore because there was no number. So the Mefarshim trying to understand, what does it mean? What does it mean that he? Firstly, why does the Torah have to tell us this? Who cares how much he was able to collect, and why does it have to say it in such a hyperbole way? So the Netziv says that if it was coming just to tell us how much, then it just have to say that he did a lot. Harbei ma'od. He said, because at the end of the day, there's nothing more than the sand of the sea. He says, rather, what it's coming to teach us is such an amazing idea. So the reason why it describes the amount as as harbei ma'od, like the sand of the sea, is not because of the number of the sand of the sea, but rather because what it's coming to teach is the quality of the preservation of the stuff that he was able to collect. So you remember, there's no refrigeration, there's nothing there, and there's no modern technology. So how was he able to keep this grain for 7 years? He said, because temperature changes, they're different. There's constant changes. There's no. It's not a fixed thing as we understand, because of the technology doesn't seem to be like we have today. So he says there are two reasons it could be. And this is quite an amazing idea. So either Yosef he was able to figure out the best way to store it, or Shaya b'siyata d'shmaya. So it said, or he had siyata d'shmaya. It wasn't just that it was his own chokhmah, but he had siyata d'shmaya. He had help from Hashem. Shaya chazak kachol hayam shmitkaber al hamayim shavim kach hayat v'ah mitkaberet al hayam avir. So because in the same way as that Hashem gave him incredible help, that in the same way as the sand of the seashore is able to withstand the impact of the waves constantly, the constant barrage of the impacts of the wave, so too was the grain that he had there was able to withstand the impact of the different temperature changes and environmental changes that happened. But what I found so fascinating about this Netziv is that he brings two options. We don't often see this amongst great Torah scholars, because it would seem to be that he would say it was all with siyata d'shmaya, all with Hashem himself. But here it's not only with siyata d'shmaya, it's also, he says, it could be that Yosef just figured it out. He figured out the best way of storing things with the technology of the day, that it was able to ensure that things would not be impacted terribly by the weather. Just an interesting idea that to see that. But then the Torah moves completely into a new field, and the Torah says, "Yosef yolad shnei banim, b'terem tavo shnat harav." And Yosef had two children before the famine years started. Asher yaldo lo Osnat bat Potifera kohen on. It was born to him Osnat bat Potifera kohen on, his wife Osnat. And she described it in an interesting way, but we leave that for the moment. But why all of a sudden does the Torah tell us that Yosef had children? It doesn't seem to flow. If you remember in the Torah itself, that there are gaps. There are sometimes lines are completed, and sometimes are completed by white space, should I say, and sometimes the lines, there's a completely new line. Those divide up the paragraphs, and you would think that at certain points there would be divisions. Like, for example, after the fact that it tells how much stuff that Yosef was able to collect. You'd think that there would be a division and a new paragraph that tells us about the birth of your children, but no, it's all connected together. And Rashi jumps on that and he says, how do we know that? Because the Torah says, firstly, Ula Yosef, your life, first he said, and to Yosef it was born, but also the fact is that it had to happen before the famine. Why? Because it's not appropriate for a person to try to have children during times of terrible famine. And so therefore the Torah is showing us that Yosef was very careful to ensure that the children that he had came before the famine began. Okay, so he has these two children. Et Shema Bachor Menashe, Ki Nashani Elohim et Kol Amali ve'et Kol Beit Avi. So he called the first the Bachor Menashe. Why? Because Nashani Elohim et Kol Amali. Now Nashani Elohim is a difficult word to understand. Normally, what it means is like dislocated. Hashem has dislocated me or separated me from et Kol Amali, from all my toil, et Kol Beit Avi, and from all that which came from before me, from my father's house. So the first son is the son that reminds him of the dislocation. The first son reminds him of the fact that he's no longer part of what we would call the shift take up. He's living in Mitzrayim. He has no clue what's going on with him. It would seem to be, and he calls his child by that name. Kara Ephraim, and the second one he calls Ephraim. Why? Kifrani Elohim be'eretz oni, because Hashem has made me fruitful. Ephraim, like Pru Revu. It's the same root from Pri. Hashem has made me successful, large, be'eretz oni, in the land of my oni, in the land of my suffering, in the land of my difficulty. So these two children are interesting, but it's interesting that we understand later on that there's the difference between Ephraim and Menashe is pointed out by Chazal, because Chazal, and it has very much to do with what with Hanukkah is all about, because the two aspects of Jewish life. The one is Menashe and the one is Ephraim, and you'll see them later on. But even in their names, you can see in the names that Yosef refers to his first son as Menashe, that it's separated him from the essential parts of his father's house. And Menashe is the one who joins Yosef throughout his life in his like political endeavors. He's the one who becomes the translator between the brothers and Yosef. He's the one who tells Yosef all the political goings on within the court, because that's who Menashe is. Menashe is not I mean, we would say in today's terms, he's still Shomer Shabbos, he's still from, he's still everything, but he's very much involved in the world. But Menashe is that political animal, whereas Ephraim is Chifrani Elohim Be'eretz Oni, that Hashem has made me. Ifrani is increased me. What is the increase? The increase of Ephraim, we know later on. We learn out Ephraim is the one who sits and learns. He's the one when Yehuda and all the brothers come down, he focuses on learning Torah with them. He focuses on the spiritual pursuits, and those two become the icons of the Jewish people. Like we say when the bracha that Yaakov is going to give to the sons, Ephraim and Menashe, because both of them, as the Netziv explains, both of them are the icons of the Jewish people. The one is the one involved in the world, the other one is the one who is involved in the Torah. But why it's so important for us to read Parashat Mukeitz during Hanukkah, and this is part of Parashat Mukeitz, is for us to understand that there are two very distinct and very careful processes within our way we're supposed to live our lives. The one is the Menashe and the other one is the Ephraim. When it comes to Hanukkah, we understand that Menashe, because they're involved in the world, much more involved in the diplomatic, political things that are going on in the world, in the whole economy, so they're much easily influenced by the thoughts of the thought process, the ideas, the philosophies of the world in which they were engaged with, and so therefore they, in many ways, have to be Menashe. They have to be Nashani. They have to dislocate themselves from those worlds. They can certainly interact and interplay and as much as they can, but they have to have the awareness of the importance, as the name Menashe implies, to dislocate themselves from the totality of that world. Because if they don't do that, then those are the ones that become the mityavnim, the ones who become involved in the culture. And on the other hand, the Menashe are the Ephraim are the icons of the Kohanim Gedolim, of those great the teachers of the Kohanim who come and are able to ensure that those who are impacted negatively by the negative thoughts are taught once again to reconnect to Torah and to mitzvot in a profound way. So that's just some ideas about Ephraim and Manasseh. Wishing everybody a wonderful day, and God bless. Peace, God. We'll continue tomorrow.
Thanks very much.